On a more personal level, about 6 years ago, my father had this like crazy expensive dental issue. I always like to joke that he was the victim of old school British dentistry, right? Which is pretty good now, but not so much, a couple of decades back. And he had a full bridge failure in his mouth. And we're staring down the barrel of a like $24,000 bill. And this is with good insurance. This is with friends and family connection, oral surgeons in Florida, where they spend half their time.
Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.
Welcome back to another episode of the Business After Hours podcast, here with my co-host Jared and our guest Maxim. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Excellent. Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Already February. Can't believe it.
I know. I can't believe it. The year started off with a whirlwind on so many levels. And being here in LA, we've had the fires as well. So it's just been, I feel like I'm waking up like Wolverine here.
Have you been affected by that a lot?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. Thankfully, personally, directly, impact is very minimal. Had to evacuate my CTO and co-founder. His home sustained some smoke damage, so that was a challenge. Our office as well, but we getting those sorted out. But it's been challenging to seal the anguish and disruption in the community, right? Where I'm someone who I've been a volunteer first responder before and have historically done a lot of volunteer work, so I'm hardwired to experience these challenges through a lens of like, let's get this done. But at the same time, it takes its wear and tear on just seeing like, oh man, it's so painful. But we get through. We always do.
It's important. Yeah, and I think that's the American.
It's tough. What'd you say, Jared?
I said that's the American in us, right? Keep going.
Yeah.
When things are happening.
Yeah, the tough times are what really defines leadership.
Right. No, you're 100% correct there. Tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so spent my whole career one way or another as an entrepreneur, working in the investment side as well. Going all the way back and keeping it succinct, born and raised in England. Both grandparents were in the Royal Air Force in various capacities. Grew up as a Boy Scout, came to the States when I was about 12 years old. So I'm a dual citizen and very much consider myself, home here in the US, and I'm proud to be part of this. Went to university, studied neuroscience at Georgetown. I was doing research there. Was like on my way to med school and was extremely passionate about it. I found, I was very at home in the emergency room. Historically, I've just been someone that, for whatever reasons, like find my zen in the chaos, like dealing with big challenges. And I found it was really for me. And thankfully, I found another version of that chaos and stress in startups and entrepreneurship and pursued that interest, fell in love with it, and got my first job at a small venture capital firm, being part of the management of a startup accelerator, investing in seed stage companies, helping them grow. Produced a documentary series that covered a lot of that, that we screened around the world. Started a consumer electronics company where I was able to sell my stake to Keurig Dr. Pepper, which was a great outcome in my mid-20s. Recently was the first employee recruited at a machine learning company and helped grow that to about 110 people when I left after 4.5 years. Now I'm the founder and CEO of JetPatient, which is a platform coming very soon. We've been working on it for about 8 months, and it's essentially ready to rock. Where, in a nutshell, I like to describe that we're building the Airbnb of medical travel. So what does that mean? A solution for people seeking to cross borders in search of better, faster, cheaper, more accessible healthcare, whether it's dental, whether it's cosmetic surgery, whether it's orthopedic surgery. There's a lot of benefit to going other places for certain people in certain situations. Historically, it's very challenging. And we've built a solution that takes care of the clinicians on the administrative side, making it seamless. And we've built the consumer experience to make it as easy, to book a surgery as it is to book a hotel room. And that's the vision we're excited to bring to fruition here.
Wow, that's good. That's great. What has it been like, trying to reach out to these clinics in other countries?
Yeah, so it's been a really cool experience, and I'll tell you why. So started this up in about February of last year, and I think we've moved very quick, and that's been based on having experience, having done this before, and being very motivated, and perhaps most importantly, being surrounded by like exceptional people building this with me. I've been able to recruit a real all-star team, which is wonderful. Um, and we've made a lot of progress on product. And I think one of the reasons why is we have been speaking with clinics nonstop throughout the entire process. And that's something I would always recommend to anyone looking to build something, whether it's a services company, whether it's a product, whether it's a small scale thing or a giant ambitious thing like what we're doing. Is there's a lot of value to keeping in touch with your stakeholders from like moment zero, right? And what do I mean by that? Like we got started, we built our own perspective, our own research before even beginning. We had our assumptions and understandings of what was going to work, maybe what wouldn't. But then once we got to that place of kind of sufficient clarity, we went out to the market. We started talking with clinics of all sizes, like 27 hospital mega systems in places like India and Thailand, all the way down to like, 2 doctor, standalone shops in places like Egypt, Colombia, Panama, you name it. We've spoken to them, really in pursuit of understanding like what are the real headaches, what are the challenges, like is what we're doing making sense, and are we doing something that's actually going to work? And what we found is by taking that approach, we've built something that we don't really need to pitch very hard, right? Because we've aligned everything according to that feedback and have had great reception. So we have about 2,000 clinics already that are in various stages of our funnel that will be coming onto our platform as we go live. And it's been very interesting. I think if there's one kind of soundbite level takeaway that I find very exciting is that the clinics that we speak with in many places really have incredibly high standards of care, no different, if not better, than what you'd find in domestic markets, whether in US, Canada, or Europe. But what really stands out to me is that in places where the medical system and these clinics really are like businesses, right? They're in the business of healthcare. They're not subject to payers, providers, insurance companies, socialized systems. The result of that is that you see this common theme where they are really bringing hospitality into healthcare. And that really excites me because we see details in clinics, where they're asking in their intake forms, like, what kind of music would you like in the waiting room? And, do you have preferences on the temperature of the wait, wherever you're recovering? And something I always like to say is that, there's always that famous saying, right? Like if you're not paying the company, you're not the product, right? You're not the customer, you're the product, right? Best example being like Facebook, right? Like if you're a user of Facebook, you're not the customer, you're the product. And similarly, in an abstract way with healthcare, this is my perspective. Certainly in the US, certainly in other places where we've got like an industry heavily dominated by mega corporations building nothing but insurance dividends for shareholders, we're ultimately not the customer, right? And even if we can have great experiences, and this is not a knock on the US healthcare system or anyone, right? Like great doctors, great hospitals, great outcomes here, many of which are world-class. But the outcome is that because we are not the customer, we can reasonably anticipate to have perhaps a lower quality experience as a patient. And I think that's something I'm very excited to be bringing to people by enabling the easy discovery, booking, and management of procedures wherever they wish to be, with high vetted standards. That is ultimately the promise I want to fulfill for people. Is like, you're the customer, you're going to have a better experience as a result because we care about that. And there isn't some middleman that's actually extracting the value. You're not a line item on a spreadsheet. Like, you're the customer. Let's make sure you have a great experience in addition to a great healthcare outcome.
So what was it that made you want to create this?
It's an excellent question. So I think it's a series of events, and you can't necessarily connect them and say like, oh, there was always this game plan, but I think it all kind of came together for me. So I think where the seed got planted was I was working in the emergency rooms during university, loved it. Just had enough exposure to see I see things that upset me. I see bureaucracy, I see administration, I see patients being put into a secondary or even tertiary priority. And I think that sucks, right? And there was a big part of me that had that realization where I was like, I don't want to be playing a role in this system where I can't take care of what really matters. Or if I do, I've got to be dealing with all these competing interests that, in my perspective, aren't so important. And I think that was kind of like the first wake up, right? Subliminally. And on a more personal level, about 6 years ago, my father had this like crazy expensive dental issue. I always like to joke that he was the victim of old school British dentistry, right? Which is pretty good now, but not so much, a couple of decades back. And he had a full bridge failure in his mouth. And we're staring down the barrel of a like $24,000 bill. And this is with good insurance. This is with friends and family connection, oral surgeons in Florida, where they spend half their time. And I was just looking at this and I was like, this is terrible. Like, we either have to wait like 6 to 9 months, perhaps, still spend a bunch of money, go back to England to get this taken care of, or we're going to get this done in the next couple of weeks here in Florida. And it's going to be like $25,000. And I just had this background knowledge of medical travel, where I had seen stories. I had friends who'd done this successfully with their families, and was like, let's see if we can solve this thing, because there's no way we're going to pay more. And I think we can save money and still have a just as good outcome, if not superior. And I went out, started looking for clinics in places like Mexico City. And one way or another, we got all this figured out, and, net savings of like $19,000. And this is inclusive of travel, right? And once I had gone through that process, I just looked at this whole thing. I was like, well, just Googling this stuff is hard, right? Like, what do you even search? Once you've got some results, how are you evaluating these clinics? Right. Some have awesome websites, some are terrible. Do they have pricing? Maybe, maybe not. Can you contact them? Maybe, through a phone call, through fax, through email, through web chat. And the whole process is fragmented and disjointed. So I had that experience, and it just occurred to me, like, this feels like a worthwhile problem to solve, and it feels solvable. And I like to describe what we're doing as like this universe of like medical and dental travel very much resembles like home rentals in the era of Craigslist, right? Like, yeah, you could do it online, but it's very directory driven. It's very middleman driven. It's very fragmented. There's no process that's really connecting both sides of the transaction in a coherent way. And what we're looking to do is build that kind of Airbnb type analog, which is to say that it is a product-driven, technology-driven experience that has vetted, curated listings, that has technology and product that is accounting for both sides of the marketplace, right? So how does a clinic coherently and professionally serve an international patient, dealing with all the challenges of things like scheduling a consultation, running telehealth, gathering medical records in a HIPAA-compliant, secure fashion, issuing quotes, getting payments in foreign currencies or in USD, which is what most of them actually want to have their bills paid with. So that's what got me started on this. So I spent years just studying it, looking to understand like where my assumptions or understandings wrong or misplaced. And once I got to a point of conviction, I knew it was time to go build this. And about this time last year, decided to jump back in the ring, and it's been a fantastic 10 months or so, letting this thing rip.
When is it expected to launch fully?
Yeah, so we're in a great place where we've built everything, right? So we're ready as far as technology and product is concerned. We'll be launching some big marketing campaigns towards the middle of this month, a couple of weeks from now, to start really beating the drum and drawing more attention on the consumer side. We anticipate launching the platform to the public most likely by the end of March. And I just say that to say that we'll commit to a date and publish it. Once we're feeling like we've got everything aligned. I'm a big believer that there's only one shot at a first impression. I think in startups there's the move fast and break things mentality, which I tend to subscribe to, but in matters of healthcare and trust and things of this significance, the stakes are high. So until I am confident that we can deliver on something, I would be happy for my own family to go through. We won't push go, but we could do it today if we wanted. But I would say end of March, you can look to discover some incredible clinics and fantastic savings, running through our platform.
So if I'm gathering correctly, it's if somebody wants to explore healthcare outside their area, they would jump on your website, find where they need to go, and pricing will be there too.
That's correct. So
what
you'll
about
be able
like
to
health insurance in America? Because there's cash price and then there's insurance price. How will that work?
Exactly. So we are focused on pure cash pay stuff, right?
Okay.
And the good news is that's the overwhelming majority of most healthcare and most of the places where we're focused on. And in terms of like the U.S. consumer, we're first, just doing pure cash pay, right? So a really simple example of that, right, is if you want dental veneers, right, you'd still have to pay cash here, right, or credit, or figure out how you're going to do it. But your insurance company is probably not going to touch it unless you've been in an accident and it's a bona fide, restorative procedure. Same with a lot in cosmetics, longevity, fertility, things of that nature. So we're first focused on the constellation of procedures that are historically just cash pay across the board. Where we're going next is integrating the capability for you to use HSA dollars, which is oftentimes a very underused asset that people have.
Yep.
I think we play our cards right. I would love to find an angle, perhaps 18 months to 2.5 years from now to figure out how we might engage with insurance companies more directly and accept it for certain things. There's a lot of good examples of, large corporations that have partnerships with the likes of Blue Cross Blue Shield, who are, teaming up with like healthcare systems in places like India and Thailand, and then offering, basically incentives to their very large employee base to say like, hey, if you want to go do your hip replacement in Mumbai, you can do that. We're going to save a ton of money. Our insurance provider is going to save a ton of money, and you will receive some of that benefit too. And it varies across the board, right? But
right.
Long story short, the playbook's there. And I don't want to commit to anything because there's a big part of me. It's like the inner pirate in me, right? Which is like, what, like, even if those guys do want to sail with us at some point, maybe we'll just start firing our cannons at them and really change things. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, no, I can see some good benefit to this, because when you present your health insurance information, they will no longer accept cash without the health insurance. So, and then there's instances where it's cheaper to be a cash patient without insurance.
Yeah.
So I can see this absolutely providing a lot of transparency that is going to disrupt some things if it gets big enough, because the insurance companies will not be happy about it. I can promise you, at least here in America.
Exactly. I always joke that, I'll know we're succeeding when we trigger an immune response from those guys, right? Like right. When they start trying to get nasty with us, that is the day I'm going to be smiling ear to ear, because it's Absolutely. Like, all right, we provoked a response here, and that's
I think
good.
You'll get a lot of smiles from a lot of Americans, especially given this Luigi situation a couple of months ago.
Yeah, it's an interesting point to bring that up, because I've had a lot of people ask me for my sentiment on that, and I think I would. It's not just like a nonsense bullshit PR talking point, right? Like I am generally not a supporter of violence of that type.
Sure.
Of course, right? But I think it's interesting to see the conversation around like that incident, right? Where you see like there's people who are extremely supportive of Luigi, and then you see people who are super supportive of the fact that this is horrible, right? And I think you can see that maybe both things have elements of fairness and truth to them. And I simply interpret it through the lens of like, all of this, like Luigi doing that, people responding positively to the incident, doesn't necessarily make the people who are like cheering it on fundamentally bad people. I see their response really as like evidence, a symptom of the level of frustration that people in many cases rightfully have, right? Like the frustrations people have dealing with the bureaucracy, the inaccessibility, like the rapacious pricing, like the number of bankruptcies people go through each year, specifically to like disastrous healthcare outcomes, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
what we're really seeing in that is, it's kind of a microcosm of this frustration that really kind of captures a lot of those themes, where you're just seeing like someone was angry enough that they acted in this way. People are cheering that person on. Some people are saying it's bad to cheer that person on. Others are saying it's good. And I think underlying all of that is a very simple truth, which is we have an exploitative system that hurts people, that is inaccessible, is unaffordable, is not transparent. And people are upset about that. And I get very excited by the idea that we are, with JetPatient, building a fantastic option B in a world where really only option A exists for most people, right? And you see a lot of people for whom option A may not even exist at all, right? And I simply want to bring transparency. Find the right place, find the right clinic, understand that it's vetted, that it's accredited, that it's transparent, that what you see on that price is going to be what you pay, and you can be free to be an empowered consumer and go through this process without having to deal with all this stuff that I consider so fundamentally harmful and parasitic to otherwise great healthcare.
I agree.
Have you found that one country is better for for certain procedures or that? What are your recommendations for people looking for those procedures?
Yeah, it's an awesome question, Jared. So I think that's one of the coolest things that I've really become closer to as we've gone through this process is, our tagline for the company is better care anywhere. And what I always like to talk about is that you can kind of throw a dart on a map, and one way or another, you'll probably find that most countries have some kind of real specialty that they just do incredibly well at. And odds are also good that you're going to save anywhere from like 30 to 80% in some cases. And what we found is, there's all kinds of interesting specializations, right? Really excellent examples, right? Like Panama has really become a hotbed of like excellent injury recovery driven by stem cell therapies, and do an incredibly great job on that on the whole. Places like Brazil and Colombia have really developed, incredible competence and an enormous ecosystem of phenomenal reconstructive and aesthetic plastic surgeons who are incredibly skilled at figuring out like how do we fix a person's face if they've been in an injury, or if there's some kind of birth defect, or even just a desire to change how you look so you feel more like yourself and more confident. Exceptional, right? Dentistry in Mexico is on the whole very good. And it's not just me like pitching my company, right?
Right.
In many of these markets, right, you do genuinely need like the curation, in my view, of like, because they're not all good, right? Like you're going to find bad ones, and fundamentally, like that's our baseline objective, is like we're going to find you the good ones, and we're going to make it easy for you to find them yourself. Place like Turkey, famously for hair transplants and veneers, and general like aesthetic dental work. I could list many, but I think
what do you for like as an American looking to go abroad for healthcare? Roughly about, is there a big savings that can happen? Is there a cost benefit of going beyond the healthcare quality?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question. So generally speaking, what I target and set my team to target, right, is if we can confidently present savings that exceed at least 33%, it's probably not going to be on our radar. So what I mean by that is if you spend $10 here, if we're not going to be able to find consistency in quality that's $7 or cheaper, we're not going to really focus on that, right? You save 50 cents on that transaction, not too meaningful. So I would say if I were to identify like an average range, because it does depend heavily, right? If you're coming from the US, though, I think for most of what we're focused on, you can very confidently expect to pay 20 to probably 70% of what you would pay here. So you start, putting that up against more significant numbers, a $9,000 procedure or in the case, that I referenced with my dad, right? Like, $24,000 versus about seven, makes a difference. And
Right.
so
No, I
it's
can see it breeding some competition worldwide too. That might drive some pricing down too if it gets big enough, obviously. Yeah.
absolutely, and certainly my hope, right, is that we can just be a catalyst to drive more transparency too. Like
Oh yeah.
I think there's almost nothing that gets hurt by having more transparency, and I think healthcare is famously, right, like we've all had that frustration where I think one of the most frustrating situations I found myself in maybe a year and a half ago, I was at the moment, without insurance, and I went to Cedars-Sinai, a world-renowned hospital just a couple blocks away from where I live here in LA. And, I just said to them, I was like, hey, I don't currently have insurance. Here's my American Express. I'm happy to pay this out of pocket. Can you tell me what that is? And they're like, oh, well, if you, start scribbling on a napkin, asking questions, and it's like, oh, like, all right, so this is going to be this. But if you pay today, it's like 40% less. And I'm like, yeah, great. So I'll do that. And then I asked follow-up questions where I was like, okay, but if we want to run a couple of extra tests or, a couple of things that we were discussing, like, can you tell me what that's going to cost just so I can figure out quickly if I'm going to say yes or no, right? And, their answer was just like, maybe. And,
Sad.
and I was just baffled where I was like, it's like and I tried to be, easygoing with it. I was like, listen, you don't have to tell me to the cent. I was like, but can you at least tell me if we're talking about like test A, is this $300? Is it $3,000? Because I was like, I just don't want to have like a surprise on a plus or minus $1,000 scale and have to deal with that afterwards. Can you just give me a rough sense? And they couldn't, right? And it's not an indictment of Cedars. It's how they all operate, and more
it's the only business
transparency.
that
Right?
we allow that to actually happen also.
Right.
If we went to anywhere else, we expect the price, and that's what we're going to pay, no matter what it is. Restaurants, manufacturing, it's all solid pricing.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And where there's mystery, there's exploitable opportunity, and I think the insurance business has done a fantastic job of quadrupling down on that. And if you're excited about what we're up to, consider us the sledgehammer and feel free to pick us up.
Absolutely. Well, Maxim, as we come to an end, why don't you go ahead and give us a little commercial for your little infomercial about your company here.
Absolutely. So JetPatient is the Airbnb of medical travel. So millions of people each year already cross borders in search of better, faster, cheaper, more accessible healthcare. It's insanely difficult and fragmented to find it. Try it for yourself. Try and Google and find clinics for whatever you're looking for. Take a look at those websites and see how difficult it is to get information, scheduling, consults. We're solving all of that by making it easy for you to find the best clinics, vetted with proven accreditations, making it easy for you to understand them, see transparent pricing, go through a telehealth consult, see if it's for you. If it is, our process will make it easy for you to go through everything from discovery to follow-up and everything in between. And we're making it easy for clinics to drive an unbelievably professional experience that prioritizes patient experience, which is what we care about the absolute most. So if you're looking to save money on a procedure, get something a little faster, get access to innovation, jetpatient.com, you'll be able to find it there.
Awesome. Jared, you got anything?
No, thanks again for coming on, Maxim. It was great to have you on. I definitely see the benefit of this and the need for it as well, because people are needing to go outside of the US. And so definitely see the benefit of this. Hopefully you get it launched quickly and soon. I know it'll probably take off pretty fast.
And I hope it is an industry disruptor. Genuinely hope that.
I really appreciate that. No, and I'm very grateful for you guys having me on and giving the opportunity to talk about something I'm so excited about. And, it's something we're really excited about, right? Making lives better for people in a real way, right? Like I always hated that with a lot of startup culture, right? So like, we're making the world a better place, like by what, right? It's like by, making like email, sending slightly easier, like kind of, right? But
Right.
I'm very excited to be doing something where, if I fulfill on my goals, we'll change an industry. And in the process of that, we'll see people who have better smiles, healthier skin, whatever it is, right? And they'll have saved money on it. They'll be treated like a human being. It'll be easier. And that I'm so excited about.
Awesome. So are we. So, all right. Well, thanks for coming, and definitely look forward to watching this thing launch and be successful for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'll look forward to staying in touch, and
Absolutely.
appreciate you guys sharing the story.
Thank you. And until next time, I'll see you guys.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.